Cover the mission support realm, including contracting, facilities, served in a policy and program analyst capacity, and has also been a deputy assistant director prior to his current role as the assistant director at FLETC. So welcome to our event. The focus of this panel is going to be what is it that, how does the CFO line of business function out in the operating components. I'm hoping that we have a lot of questions. Start thinking of them now, because these are the folks who are at the pointy end of the spear when it comes to obtaining resources to execute mission. So what I'm going to do is I'll start with you, Joe, and then just each of you in turn. What's the biggest challenge at CIS that you face in supporting the DHS mission as the department CFO?
Okay, first thank you all for hanging out and sticking it through the day. I guess now with Chip having gone before us, we're the last panel of the day, so we're make it a good one. Before I answer that question, let me just tell you a little bit about U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. So our agency is about 20,000 men and women that are responsible for administering the nation's legal immigration service system. And as Phil noted, we're a little bit unique within the department because our core source of funding is through user fees. And Congress set us up that way, and we have the ability to adjust those fees through a notice of public rulemaking and comment. So we're a little bit unique in the sense that we can almost make our own money through adjusting fees, and that has its blessings and its curse. Most people that have worked in other parts of the department, other federal agencies, under appropriations, they come to us and they say, oh, this is the land of plentiful. So that's a challenge for me to dispel that viewpoint, because in reality, operating in a fee-based environment like we have at USCIS, and charging our applicants and our petitioners a fee for a particular service comes with it a very special and very particular requirement for all of us at USCIS, and that is to do our jobs in the most efficient and the most effective way possible. So as the CFO, one of the challenges I have is to constantly ensure that that message is resonating throughout the organization, that as new ideas are coming up, they typically come with a price tag. I tend to be the one that's cautioning what's it going to cost. I can be the appetite suppressant at times of our agency. So really just trying to keep people aware that, as we add cost, we end up having to maybe adjust fees, and then we may not deliver service in the way that we're expected. So I think the biggest challenges in the environment that I operate in is really trying to ensure that we have alignment with our fee structure to our operational requirements. And over the last several years, that has been very difficult, mainly because of the changing immigration policies that have been implemented through Federal Register notices as a result of our political leadership's change in directions, having a new agenda, having to respond to executive orders that require us to enhance our screening and vetting of immigration applicants that are coming in and seeking immigration benefits. And all of these things have resulted in a general decline in our officers' productivity. And so what in prior days may have taken 100 officers to complete 1,000 cases, may be taking 200 officers. That puts a great deal of strain on our fee structure, and then the only way to make resources available to support the mission is to adjust fees. And we try to do that only in the most specific and severe cases when revenue just isn't going to support the mission. So I think really in the environment that we're operating, I think everybody can appreciate the immigration space that we're operating in at USCIS. It's pretty dynamic. There's a lot of changes occurring. And dealing with those issues and trying to fully resource the organization to be successful has really been the biggest challenge over the last few years. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to see so many people here and get the chance to talk to you a little bit about the Coast Guard. So let me tell you a little bit about the Coast Guard. We're about 49,000 people. Active duty, reserves, and civilian component. We also have 33,000 auxiliaries. We get people to come out and work for us for free. All we gotta do is give them a uniform and a good handshake every once in a while. So, but what I'll tell you is, I hope you're excited at what you're doing. I heard Chip say, hey, understand what you're doing and where you're going. I look at this crowd, and I think most of you have been around here a little bit, and sometimes it's hard to keep that excitement there. I would say two things. Every time I've been out, so the Coast Guard's a little bit different. I get to go out and be at a boat station, or I get to go out and be at a shore station, work with the boat guys, and then I get to come back and I get to do the headquarters work. It's always funner to be out in the field, I gotta tell you, but what you find is the work here is very important, being able to do that. Second thing, and I'm sure you guys have all heard this, is you guys are the money people. As soon as someone finds out you're the money person in DHS, and they are an operator in DHS, they got 1,000 questions on why they couldn't get the gloves that they wanted, why the parts were late, and why they weren't getting something that they needed to do their operations. So try to maintain that connection to them, is what I would say. If you look throughout the department right now, the secretary, just about every one of the component heads has great Facebook, Instagram, Twitter things. And you know what they're doing? They're interacting with the field every day. If you get a chance and you have 5 minutes that you can spend on looking at any of their Instagram, it will really connect you to what the field is. And that's what I think you guys got to remember. What are you guys doing every day to be able to deliver services to those people on the front line that are sitting in the cold car in the middle of the night on a dark backcountry road, that are sitting out offshore on New Year's Eve to make sure that the port's protected? All those things are important and they're very hard, right? But you guys will make them easier. Second thing I would say is, what a great place to be when you're controlling money. You, as he said, get to be the appetite suppressant for a lot of people, but you also get to tell them how to do things a little bit better. Because you know what, when I look at the projections of our budgets the next couple of years, we're not expecting an influx of a whole bunch of money. As they said, once you run out of money, you gotta think and get smarter. And you guys are the people that are gonna be able to do that. So what I'd say is, exciting time to be in this. Exciting time to be dealing with money. Department of Homeland Security is a great department. It's doing so much for the nation. Stay connected with the operators. Figure out how, as everything you do, you can deliver something a little easier for them.
It's almost embarrassing to follow these guys. They have 40,000 employees. I have 1,000 employees. But just a little bit about FLETC. We train 96 department organizations, not just DHS law enforcement, but law enforcement across the entire federal government. Is that working?
Okay.
All right. Law enforcement across the entire federal government. The only folks that we don't train in basic law enforcement are FBI and DEA. And DEA used to train with us, and for some reason they went to train with FBI. I really want to come back, but I don't think FBI will let them. So. But that's what we do. We have a singular mission, and it's to train law enforcement officers and agents. So from that perspective, I think you heard Chip, he always likes to say every component is unique and special. We are kind of unique and special in that we touch every agency at DHS. You don't get a gun and a badge unless you complete a FLETC basic law enforcement training program. So you know, we have a big role with a small staff, and you heard a fairly small budget when it's compared to everybody else. But it touches everybody across all of DHS, and I think, I know our headquarters is in Glencoe, Georgia. I know you can't really tell I'm from Georgia because I don't have much of an accent, but that's probably one of the biggest challenges is, and I almost wasn't going to say this because it's a secret I don't want to get out too much. Our headquarters is in Georgia, and I don't have to be in DC except for certain occasions. So, but that does pose some problems in supporting the DHS mission, and that's what the question was. It's not, I can't just go across town when I need to go see Congress, or if I need to see Ms. Marcotte about something. It's not just come across this thing, come across town. It's I have to get on a plane and come up the coast, and that's no fun when you're following, not tropical storm, I'm used to tropical storm, but Winter Storm Bruce. That was a rough ride yesterday coming up here. So, but I think location is probably my biggest challenge on a day-to-day basis. And then the strategic challenge that we all face is budgets. You know, our budget's been declining every year since about 2009 until last year, and our workload bottomed out in about 2014 and started up in 2015, and it's continued to go up while the budget has continued to go down. Again, you heard Chip, he likes to say, he didn't say it today, but Chip always says flat is the new up. So the budget, if it would stay flat, we would be fine, but it's been going down. And I think that strategically for all of us, that's one of our biggest issues.
So you each represent not just a different mission set, but different funding authorities and different funding levels and flows. Question I have is for entry-level folks, we have a lot of people who are just starting out in their career. What do you think it is that folks just starting out in the CFO line of business here in DHS, what are some of the things that skill sets, learning opportunities that you think they need to grab onto? Aaron?
So I would say the one good thing you're doing is coming into a department where the CFO has made it a priority to really kind of get you all trained. And I think that's important. When you got that push from the top, that's very important. So the one thing I would say is get good at your job. You can't go to the next job until you're good at your first job. So concentrate on that. And I think everyone wants to do everything at once, but concentrate on getting your job and understanding. But then look for opportunities, all right? Look for opportunities to jump to another component, jump to another discipline, jump to another thing. And the way you do that is you continue to look at what kind of certifications you want, what are the certifications that you want to do, and how are you going to get there. Have a plan, right? Second thing, when you talk about those jumps, remember, every one of you is going to get an opportunity. That opportunity is going to come at an inconvenient time. I guarantee it, all right? So be prepared for that. What is your plan to be able to move and work around the department, especially when there's opportunities that are sometimes tough to take? We are very much creatures of habit, right? And so what is an inopportune time? Well, I just got my commute really good on how I'm going. I don't want to go to that other place now because I'm going to have to take the other metro line. I don't want to do that. It can be as simple as that or as big as uprooting yourself. So what I would say is have a plan for yourself. Everyone in this department is prepared to help you promote and move on, but no one's going to care as much about your plan as you are. All right. So that's the first thing. Second thing, write it down. Read every Harvard study that you said. If someone thinks it, they might get it there. If they write it down and review it on a regular basis, they're almost guaranteed to get it. So look and seek opportunities.
I echo what the Admiral said. Go a little bit more specific. Technical competence, I think, at the entry level is key. Whether you're an accountant or a budget person or an internal controls person, really master the technicalities of the job. On the accounting side, to understand what you're doing in that arena. On the budget side, I used to work with probably the best budget officer I've ever worked with, who just recently passed away after a short battle with cancer. But she always said a good budget person is nosy. And she was very nosy. But what she meant by that is understanding the organization, ask questions. Don't just know the how of what you're doing, know the why. Why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing these things? She, again, she made it simple by saying be nosy, but what she meant was just ask good questions and understand the organization, understand the job you're in. So I think from the entry level, that's probably that technical competence is really the most important piece at that age. And then communication skills. And not, when people think about communication skills, they think about talking. But when I think about communication skills, I think about listening. Listen and hear what people are saying. Hear what they're not saying. And then understand how to apply those things. I think those are probably the two most important areas.
Joe?
So one of the things that I most enjoy about being a component CFO is that I get to work with colleagues from across the CFO line of business spectrum. One day I'm sitting in with my internal control and risk analysis folks, then I'm bouncing over and I'm sitting with my accountants to talk about how they're posting against a standard general ledger, then I'm off talking about how we're executing our budget, and then I'm popping over and I'm talking about financial systems modernization. It just goes from one thing to the other, but in sitting down with the team and talking about all these subjects, The main thing for me, and I echo what my colleagues have said, is that one, we want to build a solid foundation upon which all entry-level financial managers grow from. To me, that is so critical. And Chip mentioned the career path guide the Burrell's team put together. I have embraced that. I applaud Chip or Burrell and his team for putting that together, because at USCIS, we really use that as a way to gauge where our entry level, our new recruits into financial management are in their building that core foundation, and we leverage their training. So certainly that's a critical piece. But also I think another thing is you got to like numbers, right? I mean, I don't care what line of business in, numbers are part of it, and I bet there's a lot of people here that love to sit down and build a spreadsheet. I mean, that's the glue that's kept me in the business probably for 30 years, is I still love to do a spreadsheet. And I think my team back at USCIS sometimes gets frustrated because I'll go in and start formatting and redoing their spreadsheets. I said, well, I have a particular look and feel to my spreadsheets that I hope that you all will adopt, and it's honed on 30 years of experience. So you got to give me a little love. So I would say that's really critical. If you don't have a love for spreadsheets and numbers, you might want to maybe look someplace else, but I think we all share in that. And then really, to me, it's the recipe for success as you enter into the financial management community is really possessing sort of that intellectual curiosity to research, read, and build coalitions through your own energy and efforts with your peers, because that's how you accelerate learning and your impact on your organization is doing all of those things. So, I hope that you love numbers. I hope you love to read and research. And finally, I'd say that, and this I tell my team all the time, a career in financial management, it's a marathon, is not a sprint. Give yourself time to develop and grow, and don't be out chasing the next grade necessarily. I mean, really, give yourself time to learn the mission, learn, develop, build that foundation, so that when you do make that next career step, you're empowered, you're enabled, and you're going to be incredibly impactful. And that's really, at the end of the day, what we all want to do, is be impactful in individual jobs.
Okay, and that's excellent observations. Now, fast forward 10, 20, 30 years. Now you're the component CFO. Now you're going to hire one of these folks to fill an SES's job, a senior manager's job. Joe, what are you looking for, starting with the base that you just described?
Yes, I mean, I'm sorry, if we're looking for...
So what are you looking for at CIS? What are you looking for in your executive level and senior level talent and prospects coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally we're looking for people with strong interpersonal skills, people that demonstrate personal integrity, a sound understanding of the financial management, those sort of critical building blocks. I think executives, if they possess that, it allows them to secure trust and support within their organization and of their subordinate staff. And just executives have to embrace continuous learning. Executive level financial managers must be able to stay current with ever-changing financial management environment. And I tell my team all the time at USCIS that I think I learn more from them than they probably learn from me. But it's you just have to be a successful person coming in at executive level really has to embrace those types of activities. And I think if they can have that strong interpersonal skills, work with the team, have that personal integrity, and you build the trust, and you can create a strong organization that will achieve great success in the community.
Don?
Yeah, I echo that, and I think leadership is probably what you're looking for. Again, I'm like Joe. I like nothing more than to shut my door, put my green eye shades on, and I'm not as probably a spreadsheet savvy as he is, but analyze things, figure out, okay, where's the patterns, what's going on here, why did this happen? I love to do that stuff, but at this level, that's not what they're paying me to do. My wife asks me all the time, what is it you actually do? And I said, well, I don't do much. I make sure a lot gets done, but I don't actually do much. So at this level, I think you're looking for leadership. You're looking for someone who can see the big picture, who's And I think Angie Bailey mentioned it earlier, that political savvy, can see the landscape, sort of read the landscape, see where things are going, kind of read the tea leaves. It's definitely more of an art than a science at the executive level. That's the budget folks can tell you that it's an art more than a science. Accountants, which I have an accounting background, to some degree, that's the science piece of it, but you have to be able to sort of put the whole picture together at a high level and see things on a political landscape. So, when we're looking to hire someone, I think that's what we're looking for. It's just someone who has those leadership capabilities across the spectrum.
Now you have the opportunity not just for the military officer to ascend to flag rank, but you also have SESs and GS. How would you answer this question?
Yeah, so I'll answer mainly from the GS perspective, but kind of an overall leadership is we're looking for leaderships and communicators, right? That's what you're looking for as you get up this, and it doesn't happen overnight that you get there and do these. I think you got to build it within those technical skills, understand what makes a program or what makes a something that you're doing, and as you learn to ask the right questions about it. I like how you said that. A great analyst is someone that's nosy, and I think when you get to be the leader, you can't know everything, so you got to know the right questions to ask to make sure that you're comfortable in figuring out the way ahead. I also think when you look at all the lines of effort that we have and how those are being developed, one of the things you got to do as that leader is develop a sense for enterprise risk. And what do I mean by that? You know what? For someone that's running a program, a small portion of it, taking 5% of their funds can mean something almost devastating to them. But if you look at that from an enterprise level and you kind of look at what that overall impact is when you're down somewhere else, you need to make that shift because it's more important to the enterprise, to the organization. So I think it becomes that way of having a little bit different view of not just what is a single leg of the stool, but how is a stool standing all together. The other thing I would say, and this is more of a critique of senior people like me, is ability to listen to the junior people that know and are in there, right? And I will tell you that when you look, and I'm sure every one of you are going to struggle with that, but remember that as you grow up. Every rank that you go up, every series you go up, there's going to be someone junior to you. Are you listening to them? Are you taking their ideas? Or are you saying, I've already been there, done that, I know better? Because things change, right? I think that's the one point. So leadership, communications, enterprise risk is where I'd say we look for.
I'm going to throw it over to the audience if you have any questions, but one, I mean, you've talked about being able to see the big picture, make those enterprise kind of trade-offs. What do those things look like when you're looking at someone's record or their resume? What are some of those things that they need to have on that piece of paper that you're saying, oh, this is a person I want to, they're on the cert, but this is really someone I want to interview, or this is really someone who can, mesh with our mission. What are some of those? The Admiral talked about and described an experience of, operations, mission in the organization to finance. Coast Guard finance and then back, and realizing that's unique to the military culture, and you're able to do that. What are you looking for as far as some of those special resume items?
So I'll start. I think important is to ensure you have a connection between experience, desire, and the position that you're trying to fill. When we are trying to fill a position in USCIS through lots of past trial and errors of recruiting at all grade levels and in all disciplines, the one common thread that has really proven successful for us is to make sure during the review of a resume or whether it's an interview that you really drill into, does the person possess the passion, the desire, the understanding of the position that we're trying to fill, because it's incumbent on leaders and managers, whoever is recruiting for that fact, to connect people to the job in a way that's going to ensure success. The last thing we want is to have people enter into a position because it achieves a desired grade level, but they really aren't prepared to do the job, and then you spend an enormous amount of time trying to convince them that, oh, it's really a good career path that you've now gotten yourself into. We don't want that, right? We want to find those individuals who have an honest and true desire to pursue a career in financial management, whether it's in risk management, internal control, accounting, budget, wherever. We need to make sure that we're connecting people with the jobs that is going to ensure that they're fulfilled, satisfied, that they understand what they're getting themselves into, so that we don't end up having a problem down the road that then creates lots of problems, lots of distractions from all of us that are trying to achieve the mission. So that's something that I've learned the hard way over the years, and that we put a lot of energy into.
I take a little bit different approach. And what I've looked for over the years in hiring folks is a variety in their background, a varied background, if you will. My current deputy didn't really have a financial background when I hired her. She had several jobs throughout the organization, sort of all over the organization. She actually said she couldn't hold a job down. So she never spent more than about 2 years in any one spot. And she's actually been with me as my deputy now for going on 6 years. But it's that variety, and that I mentioned it before, understanding the organization and not just looking at it from a financial management perspective, but looking at it from all parts of the organization. My current deputy had been in our training resources coordination area in scheduling. She'd been in procurement. She'd been in student services. So she has a really good understanding of the organization, much better than me. And that's actually what I like to do. Is she knows it better than I do, which makes my job easy. So that's sort of what I look for is this thing. An overall background it does have to. I mentioned technical competency. It does have to include the financial management piece, but also working outside that arena to understand the organization across the spectrum.
Okay.
So the only thing I'd add there is we kind of do both. Depending on the position we're looking for that varied background, or maybe we're looking for a technical expertise. We can kind of look at both. So I think you got to be careful. The one thing I will tell you that when we look at resumes and we look at things that they're doing, we're looking for what were those big projects that they were involved in, and how did they make a difference in those big programs? Not just manage something day to day or do that. The other thing I will tell you is when you get to an interview and we're interviewing people, we're not looking for the person that wants to become an SES. We're looking for the person that's passionate about being a leader within the organization. And I think there's a very big difference a lot of times.
Any questions from the audience on any subject? Doesn't have to just be career, on anything at all. Yeah, please.
I have a question about acquisitions and procurement. One of the initial stages in that process, from my understanding, is basically going from mission needs to operational requirements. How do you determine what your operational requirements are? And does the department have guidance on that?
So I'll take that from us. So from the Coast Guard's perspective, that's where it all starts, right? Because you've got to have requirements that you want. But when you start to look at those requirements, you got to be very precise in that. Because saying I need to get transportation from here down to Stafford, where I live, is one thing. Is that a Cadillac? Is that a Prism? Is that the bus? Is another thing, right? So we have to have requirements, but you also have to have them well defined. And usually they are built with an idea of what we can afford. So I think there's for us, we go through kind of that whole process that you were beginning to talk about. That I got to tell you, I'm not a expert on the big business, how we put all the requirements together and bring them forward to an AE2 or ARB and all those kind of things. But it is a process. I think the one great thing the department's starting to bring together is joint requirements councils to make sure that if I'm going out and looking for a helicopter, how much different does that need to be than CBPs and some of the other ones? So.
And there is a process across the department. We're part of that process, but we don't actually own that acquisition process. The procurement folks, the planning folks, they're the ones that actually run that process. The CFOs are part of that. You know, from the FLETC perspective, we're kind of lucky and unlucky. Our operating requirements are sort of driven by what our customers need. How many agents and officers need to be trained, who needs to be trained when, where. That feeds into our process as to what we do from investment standpoints and that sort of thing. So, you know, it's we don't go out and say I want to do this because FLETC needs it. We say I need these facilities or these systems or whatever because our partners need it to train their officers and agents. But it does go through an acquisition. Well, we call it a FLETC acquisition intake process. It comes in. There's a whole process that we go through and prioritize projects and what needs to happen, and then it goes up to our director and deputy for approval.
Did that get it for you? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question with USCIS. You're a fee-based entity, and you know, as a government entity, we're not supposed to be making a profit, but then you also have to plan ahead, obviously. So how do you go about coming up with the appropriate fee, and do you have long-range plan with, you know, when the fee would increase, or how does that work?
That's a very good question, and that's one of the core business activities at USCIS that we administer in my office, which is really executing the annual budget and being able to have tools in place that allow us to monitor our spending relative to new revenue. So we're very much like a business. We have reports, we have ways in which we're evaluating the revenue that we're collecting from immigration application petitions and how that compares to our spending. And in general, we have a volume projection committee that meets annually, or several times a year actually, to forecast the immigration application petitions that we expect to receive. We then translate that into a revenue estimate, and then that is what we use to essentially determine what our spending authority will ask Congress to provide us for. The actual process, though, of determining whether the fees are set to allow us to achieve the mission and recover full cost is through activity-based costing. This is a requirement that's in the CFO Act of 1990 that we review our fees on a biennial basis, and we follow that practice very rigorously. The reviews don't always result in a rulemaking to adjust fees, but in recent years we have gone through that process and done that. But generally, it is a challenge. USCIS fee funding, we're set up as a direct account, so what that means is that the fees we collect, we directly spend. So there are other fees that are collected and then they offset an appropriation. So in that reimbursable arrangement, it's a little bit easier because you have appropriations to support you if fees go to Treasury. But we have to live off our fees. So one of the things that we also do is we have to retain a certain level of unspent fee revenue in our carryover. Our agency is funded with no year money, so we retain funds from one year to the next. So we have to be able to retain an appropriate amount of money to sustain our operations during startup when outlays tend to be higher than our revenue. But also carryover